Hello, welcome to another bite-sized coding time with the Port Moody Public Library. My name is Virginia, and today we are going to talk about variables. Now, variables are very useful. Whether you are coding in Scratch or any other programming languages, you find yourself needing to use variables quite a bit. So, what is a variable? Well, think of the name. It might give you a little bit of a hint of what a variable is or does. When we say something varies, we're basically saying that something changes. So a variable is something that we need to keep track of, a thing that changes throughout our game or throughout our story. So think about a game, for example. What are some of the things that changes throughout the program? Score, points, how many coins you have collected, or how much time has passed, or how many lives you still have until it is game over. All those numbers are things that you want to keep track of throughout your program so that the player knows how good or maybe how bad they're doing. And we need a variable to help me keep track of all of that. So I like to think of a variable as a box, like this one here. Right now, there's nothing in the box. It's an empty box. But when I make a variable, I'm kind of basically creating a box. And for each of the things that I need to keep track of, I need a different box. So in my example here, I have a box here, and I would like this box to keep track of how many stuffed animals I have collected. So I need to name this box so that I know what this box does. Now, when you're naming your variable or naming your boxes, you want to make sure that it is something that makes sense, not just to you, but also to maybe you in a year when you look back into your code, or maybe to someone else who's trying to go through your code and see how you do something. You want to make sure that your variables have names that make sense, that are logical, right? So if I just call this box 1, and maybe in my program I have box 2, box 3, box 4, no one would know what this box does because it's just called a generic box 1. So a better name would be something that actually reflects what it does. So in my case, because I'm talking about a box that keeps tracks of stuffed animals, I am going to call this box the animal box. Makes sense, right? Logical. So once I've got my name for my box, the next thing I need to tell my program is what does the box have at the moment, right? In the beginning of my program, in the beginning of my game, what is the value of animals? So what does this variable equal to? And in my case right now, it's 0 because I have not collected any animals yet. So I need to tell my game or my program that variable animals is equal to 0. There's nothing in there right now. But once I press start, once I start my game, I'm looking around and I found one animal and I'm going to put that in my box. And now I have one animal. So my variable has changed. It is now 1 instead of 0. And I walk around, and I find another animal. And now I have 2 animals. So my variable animals is now equal to 2. So you could keep adding into your animal box. And you could keep changing numbers for your variable. And now I only have 1 left. So this is what, when we talk about variable, it's like a box that helps you keep track of things that changes. So now that you have an idea of what a variable is, let's take a look at how you would create a variable in Scratch and how you would change the value, change the number for your variable. So I am going to share my screen. So we'll take a look at our Scratch and see how we do that. All right, so this is my little example. And you're probably like, what is happening here? Well, I've got a glove that is wearing gloves, apparently. And I've got 4 tacos here. Don't ask me why. It is just what it is. Like we always say to everyone that comes to our coding programs, you can make your game, make your story, whatever way you like in Scratch. So I've got tacos and glove. And let's take a look at what's behind in the code. So I'm going to minimize the full screen here so you can see our code. And it's a very simple example right now. I've got a glove sprite and I have got 4 taco sprite here. Okay. And basically the idea is that every time the glove goes and touch a taco, it's going to go eat it. Why does a glove eat taco? Because it's delicious. I don't know. And every time it touches the taco, right, it is going to say yum. And then we want to give the taco variable a point. So we want to know that, keep track of how many tacos the glove has eaten. So right now, I have no variables yet. So far what I've got is, in the beginning, we have the setting up the game. This is always something that we recommend because we don't know what the other person has left your game as. Maybe I moved the glove here, maybe I'll like move your taco somewhere else, right? And so every time we start the game, we always want to make sure that it starts in the right place. So these are what the first 3 blocks do. We make sure that the glove changes back into this particular costume, and it is in the middle of the screen. So x equals 0, y equals 0, and it's going to wait a second before it does anything. So that's kind of what this does. Now then, once that has started, what I want my game to forever and keep track of, so you can see we have got the forever sandwich here, is to keep track of what happens throughout the game. So if the glove at any point touches taco, or taco 2, or taco 3, or taco 4, right there, then it's going to change its costume to a different costume. It's going to say yum for 1 second. Going to go back to the middle of the screen. So like a reset. And then it's going to switch the costume back to the first one. So that's kind of the basic we've got here. And then for the taco, all of them have the same code. It's basically when the game starts, show up, and then forever and ever, check, are you touching the glove? Are you touching the glove? If you're touching the glove, meaning that the glove is coming to eat you, then hide because it's got eaten. So that's the same for all 4 tacos here. All right, so right now, if I do that, yes, it does all the things, but it doesn't actually help. There's no way to keep track of how many tacos I've eaten yet. So what we need, of course, is a variable. So let's press play and see what it does now. So you can see it reset back to the same place. Every time I go eat a taco, it go yum, and it changes costume. Yum, it changes costume, right? So nothing happens yet, but I want to know how many tacos there are. What if this is a game where taco just sort of randomly appears on your screen, and you need to know, like within maybe a minute, how many tacos you can grab before your time is up. For example, something like that. So you need a variable to keep track of the tacos. So let's create one. So what you want to do is on the left-hand side, where you got all the different kinds of code and all the different kinds of blocks, you want to go into variables. I'm going to click the orange one right here. And then it is going to give you an option to make a variable. So it has an example here, but we don't need that one because this is, again, remember we talked about how we want to name our own variables, make it something that makes sense. My variable is not going to make any sense to anybody. So let's create a new one. So let's go make a variable. And so with this, I'm going to give it a name. So let's say tacos, right? Because that makes sense, tacos. And I am going to click OK. So now that I have done that, you might notice on my screen here, on my preview screen, there is a new thing that shows up. It says tacos equals 0. So I have just created a variable to keep track of how many tacos I have eaten. All right. And this here it always shows up in the top left corner, but you can always move it. So I can move it, give it makes sense more for your game to be somewhere here, for example, or give it a sort of in the way, you can change it. Okay. Another option is if you don't even want it to show up, you can actually click on the check mark on the left hand side here next to your variable name and just turn it off. And then that way it won't show up. Now, if you're building a game where you want the player to know how many lives they have or how many points they get, you probably want to make that visible to the player. So we want to keep that back up. Now, why it that? Okay, interesting. So I just discovered as we were doing this that you can actually change how it looks like by double clicking on it. Huh, fancy that. Anyway, I learned something new today. So now we've got tacos here equals 0. Okay, so that's great. But the thing is, just like how when we talk about resetting our game, sometimes if somebody plays your game and then someone else comes along and maybe it got up to the number got up to like 50, right? You don't want the next person to start the game with 50 because you always want the game to start with no tacos. So what you want to do in your reset part of the game is to make sure that you set your variable. You tell the computer that when your game starts, there is no taco. Okay, so we're going to set, not my variable, but set tacos to 0. It's like when we talk about the empty boxes, it's kind of same idea. So there's an empty box, there's no tacos in it just yet. So then that way, no matter what happens here, every time they click the green flag, they will always reset to 0. So that's very important. So now let's attach these two back together. So now, great. So now I set it to 0. Okay, so let's play our game and see what happens. So I'm going to press on the green flag. And now I've got a variable. It should keep track of how many tacos I have. So let's go eat a taco here. Yum. Wait a second. It's not changing. Maybe that particular taco. Let's try this one. Yum. Well, no, still not changing. Why is that? Well, you can see from the code here, there's actually no code yet to tell the game or the program what to do. Like there's nowhere here to increase the variable by 1, for example, when we eat 1 taco. So that's what we need here, is that because right now we just reset it to 0, but we don't have a code yet to make it increase the number in a variable. So let's take a look at our choices here on the left. You can see we've got set my variable, which is what we use. And there we are. Change my variable by 1. That's exactly what we need, because every time it eats a taco, we need to add 1 to the box. So let's do that. So I'm going to click on change, and then I'm going to drop it. It really doesn't matter. Let's drop it right here. Okay. And then remember, you need to change this back to taco so that it knows which variable you're changing and what box you're referring to. So now that should work. So what we've got is that it starts with 0, but every time it touches a taco, it's going to change costume. It's going to, like say yum, and then it should change the taco score by 1. So let's see if it does that. So let's go stop and let's go play again. And taco. Oh, there we go. It said you change 1, taco 2, taco 3, and taco 4. So yes, it is working exactly as we intended to. So every time it touches, it eats a taco, the taco number will change. Now, like we talked about earlier, it doesn't always have to start at 0, right? So it depends on what your game is. So maybe, especially if you're doing a game about how many lives, your player has, very often it starts with a bigger number, right? It doesn't start with 0. It starts with 5, and then every time they maybe make a mistake, then it becomes 4, and then it goes down until it hits 0, then it triggers the game over kind of event, right? So you can do that. So we can pretend we're doing that. So I'm going to change this to 4. And then maybe you're counting how many tacos got eaten in this case. So when you want to decrease the number, instead of changing it by 1, we want to do the opposite, which is changing it by -1. So we want to go into a negative number. So you can type in -1 in the box here. So let's see if that works. I'm going to stop and reset. So you can see now, because we have set it to set tacos to 4, so it starts with 4 in the taco variable. And so I'm going to go eat a taco. Oh, only 3 tacos left. Eat another taco. Only 2 tacos left. Eat another taco. Only 1 taco left. And eat another taco. 0 taco left, right? So you can see the numbers can change that way. And remember when we talk about how maybe at 0 taco, something will happen, right? Like it triggers the next event. So that's what a variable is and how you can use it in Scratch and how you can make one and how you can code with a variable to help you keep track of what changes throughout your game or throughout your story. So that is a quick introduction to variables. So remember, variable is like a box. You need to give it a name, right? And then tell your program how many is in the box to start with. And then as the game goes on, you have to make sure you get code to change the variable value from the starting point to whatever it is. And that will help you keep track of a lot of things in your game or your story. So that's it for today. Thank you again for coding along with us. If you have any questions, please leave us a comment. And if you build something with a variable, we would love to see that. So we can share your project in Scratch. And then once you have made it available, you can jot down a link to your game or your story and put it down below in the comments, and so that we can all take a look and see what cool things you do with your variables. So until next time, happy coding, and we'll see you again next Monday at 4 o'clock. Bye.